Okay, so I've been talking about styles, but what is a style? In Microsoft Word, there's two kinds of styles. There's paragraph styles and there are attribute styles. The paragraph styles apply to the entire paragraph. So they have to do with things like what the font type is, how big the font is it bold, is it left aligned or center aligned or right aligned, is it indented, and it applies to the entire paragraph. Attribute styles, on the other hand, they just are things that have to do with fonts, the font size, the font type, that sort of thing, and it applies only to the individual characters that you select. Now, when attribute styles are useful is if you're doing something to text that involves sort of multiple things that you're doing to the text. For instance, like the example we talked about earlier, maybe you're making your text bold and a particular color, or italic and a particular color. So that rather than selecting it, making it bold, going up and picking the color every single time, you can build that into a style so that all you have to do is have your cursor in the text, pick the style, and boom, you're good to go. So if we have time, we'll talk about those. Otherwise, it is in your handout, the attribute styles. The two basic ones that you can start with and then build on. Strong is for bold, and emphasis is for italic. And you can, if you're just applying bold and italic, that's fine. This is when you're doing more than that. You're applying bold and something else. That's what it's really useful. Okay, so let's take a look now under the hood at what's happening in our document here. So I'm going to go back up to the top of my formatting, my 01 formatting activity. And in your paragraph group up here on your home tab on your ribbon, we have, kind of looks like a big backwards P. It's a paragraph mark. If I click on that, that is my show hide. And it's just a toggle. It turns your hidden characters on and off. So what are we looking at here? So all of the paragraph marks, the big backwards P, that's where you've hit the enter key or the return key. So that's what those are. If you hit the space bar, you see little dots. If I hit the tab key, I see little arrows. So those are all different symbols that you'll see under the hood. Now, in the beginning, it's really feels a little awkward and overwhelming sometimes to turn these on. But if you really want to see what's happening with a document, this is the way to do it. Because this will tell you, wow, is that extra space there because somebody's hit the enter key, or is it there because they built it into the styles, or what's going on with this? Why is it behaving the way it is? Sometimes people will bring me a document and they'll say, I don't understand, it's just being so weird, what's going on? And I'll turn this on and I'll find, oh, you hit the tab key in the middle of a paragraph. And that's why it's being so strange. So this is really helpful. Whenever you have something weird in your document, turn this on. Now, these do not print, these hidden characters. So don't worry about, oh my gosh, I got to remember to turn them off. No, you don't have to worry about that. This is just something that you see visually. But this is literally the way the program itself is keeping track of what's going on. Just like you've got this look now under the hood to see what's really happening under here.
Does PowerPoint show all characters? Does Canvas show?
You know, that's a really good question.
It'd be nice to see it in those areas too.
It would be, and I've never tried to turn it on in PowerPoint, so I've never thought about it, although it might, because a lot of the Office documents work in a very similar way, but I don't know about Canvas. So I've never looked at it in Canvas. But yes, it is very handy. After 8 years in publishing, gosh, if they're not turned on, I was like, well, how do I know what's going on?
Yeah.
I don't know why it's doing what it's doing, but as soon as I turn it on, now I know why it's doing what it's doing. So a couple things that I want to show you here. I promised to show you how you don't have to hit the enter key for extra spacing. So let's imagine that maybe I want extra space around my bear here. Maybe I want a little more space before and after my graphics. I don't want them to be quite so tight to the text. So I can click on my graphic, and then I can come up to my paragraph group. And let me explain something about the ribbon. So the way the ribbon is set up in Word, you have your different tabs up here, and then I'm on the Home tab right now, and there's these major groupings, and they're divided by a vertical line. And on most of the major groupings, there's a little box in the bottom right corner that has a little arrow on it, And what that little box with the arrow on it means is there's a window associated with this group. So if I click on that for the paragraph group, it opens the paragraph window. Now notice one of the choices that we have here for the paragraph, look, alignment, left, centered, right. I do not have to go space, 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 tab, tab, tab. I can just say, center this. It'll do a much better job, by the way, than when you try and do the space, 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 tab, tab, tab thing anyway. And down here we have spacing before and after. So maybe I want, a little extra space before and after my bear. I can just do 18 point before, 18 point after. And now I have a little extra space around my bear. That's all you have to do. Very, very simple. So you don't have to do all that extra hard returns. Now, but what if I want to move, maybe I want this whole subhead to get moved down to the next page. So instead of hitting the enter key a whole bunch of times, what I can do is I can insert a page break. Now there's a couple ways that you can do this. You can do it from your insert tab, you can insert a page break, but the keyboard shortcut for this is really simple. You hold down the control key while you hit enter. Control enter will give you a page break. And notice, because I have my hidden characters turned on, I can even see my page break. It actually tells me right there. Let me make this a little bit bigger, make it a little easier to see. So it literally tells you your page break is there. And also, because my show hidden characters is turned on, if I want to get rid of that page break, it's really easy. I just come over and I highlight it and I just delete it. Just hit the delete key. So it makes it very, very easy to interact with. So no more enter, enter, enter to go to a new page. Now the other reason that people often will do sort of funny things with spaces is to force a word down to another line. So maybe you just don't like the word where it is, or you think it would read more smoothly if the word's on the next line. So the way to do that, instead of hitting the space bar a whole bunch of times, if I want to force this first word, the, at the end of the first line rather, if I want to force that down, I just selected my space there, and now I hold down the shift key when I hit the enter key. Shift enter gives me what's called a forced line break. The character looks sort of like an arrow with a little tail on it. It's a little hard to see on the screen. Unfortunately, when I expand the size of the text, it does not expand the size of the character, so I can't really zoom in on this very well for you. Reminds me of my kitty in the morning when she wants her breakfast with her tail straight up in the air. So you've got this little arrow with a tail straight up in the air. That is a forced line break, also sometimes called a soft return. What that does is it forces a word down to the next line. In other words, it forces the line to break there, but it does not create a new paragraph. So that's important because paragraphs have certain behaviors associated with them, and we don't always want to create a new paragraph when we want to break a line. So that is our forced line break. So no more space, 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 tab, 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 enter, enter, enter. We know how to not do that now. So let me show you a couple other things here, just a couple quick tips about selecting text. Most people know that when you double click on a word, you get the entire word. So if I click 1, 2, it selects the entire word. What I find is less commonly known is the triple click. If I triple click on a paragraph, 1, 2, 3, it selects the entire paragraph. Now what's nice about that is it selects the entire paragraph even if part of the paragraph is on the next page, which is really cool because sometimes what will happen is you won't realize that there's some paragraph left over on the next page, and then later you're trying to figure out what the heck was this thing that's left over here. Another trick for selecting text, if you just want a little bit of text, especially if you just want a little bit of text that's part of a word. So for instance, English teachers sometimes they're teaching about prefixes, suffixes, that kind of thing. If I were working on the prefix non, N-O-N, and I wanted to point out the prefix to students, I can put my cursor right next to where it says non in the word nonsense, and then I hold down my shift key and use my arrow key. Shift arrow allows you to have very precise control over what you're selecting. So you can select individual letters. It also works with up and down arrow keys. So if I do shift up or do shift down, So another way of selecting text. You can even hold down your shift key and tap your home key, which I don't know if you guys, yeah, I think you might have it in the top corner there. Shift home will select from where you are to the beginning of the line. Shift end will select from where you are to the end of the line. So lots of really nice little variations there using the shift key when you're selecting. But the one that's really, really useful is called the shift click technique. And the way this works is if you're selecting, well, particularly if you're selecting a large body of text, it's very useful. Let me see if this has ever happened to anybody. So you start selecting text, you're highlighting with your mouse, and suddenly, zip, you're at the bottom of the page. And now you try to go the opposite direction, right? And now, zip, you're at the top of the page. There's something about that just steams me. It's time for a coffee break in my office, because otherwise the computer could be in mortal danger. So I click where I want to start. Just click with the mouse. I scroll to where I want to end. I hold down the shift key and I click again. And it selects absolutely everything in between. So I'll do it one more time. So you click where you want to start. Just scroll to where you want to end. And now, while you're holding down the shift key, click again.
Amazing for email.
It is, yes. Yep, amazing for email, amazing for a lot of things actually. And although it's particularly useful over large blocks of text, you can also do it over short blocks of text. So if I just click somewhere and then I hold down the shift key, I can grab a whole bunch that way. Okay, so let's look now at how to actually apply our heading styles. So in this little sample document, I tell you here what the heading is meant to be. So at the top we have as a test heading 1. That's meant to be a heading 1. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can apply your heading 1 style. One of the ways is you can come up into your styles gallery, and your styles gallery is right here on your home tab of your ribbon. Your styles gallery, I can come up to where it says heading 1 in the styles gallery and just click where it says heading 1. Now the Styles Gallery can confuse people a little bit sometimes because it gives you a preview on mouse over, but when you hover, it doesn't apply the style. It doesn't apply the style till you click on the style, and then it applies the style. So that's one way to apply your heading style. And now I'm going to use my absolutely favorite keyboard shortcut, undo, Control Z. If you don't know Control Z, that is such a handy keyboard shortcut. Love that one. Now, another way to apply your styles is using your styles pane. So remember, in our group on the ribbon, whenever I see a little box with an arrow in the bottom right corner of the group, that means when I click on it, I get a whole window. And here in my styles window, I can just scroll down to where I can see my heading styles, and I just click where it says heading 1. That's another way of applying your heading. Notice I'm not selecting the text here in my heading 1. Whoops. All I'm doing is just clicking in it. That's actually, when you're applying paragraph styles, it's better just to have your focus there and not actually select text unless you're applying it to multiple paragraphs. So that was another way to apply my heading 1 style. Okay, a third way, and this is using a keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut for heading 1 is Control-Alt-1. And it's the one that's on your numbers above your letters. So up there above Q is your number 1. Not to be confused with the numbers that are on your number pad on an extended keyboard. Now you guys are working on laptops, so you don't have the extended keyboard, but it works differently. The extended number pad keyboard, that works differently from the numbers that are above the letters. So Control-Alt-1 is how we apply a heading 1.
Can you show real quick how you came up with that styles bar on the
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was looking down.
So there's 2 different ways to do it. I can just click on the button,
Oh, okay. That's right.
or this is kind of a fun keyboard shortcut. It's Control and Alt and Shift and S for styles. And when I first heard that, I thought, that's really complicated. How am I going to remember all that? And then one of my buddies who's blind said to me, no, it's not. He said, it's super easy. It's everything you usually hold down plus S for styles. And I realized he's right. Control and Alt and Shift, those are the things we generally hold down as modifier keys. All of those at the same time, and then S for styles. And it's just a toggle, goes on and off. So that's the other way to get there. By the way, on your own computers, if you're seeing a short list of styles and not this really nice long list like that I have, you just need to tell it you want more styles. There's a little options button down in the bottom right corner of your styles window here. When I click on that options button, it takes me to the window that allows me to control how my style pane is going to look. Mine is set at all styles to show alphabetical. The default is generally recommended, and it's in a weird order. So I generally would suggest that you have all styles alphabetical until you get used to it and you know exactly what you want. You can customize all of this. It's a little bit of work, but once you've got it customized, you can tell it to remember your customization. And the way you do that is that in every single style window, there's a little radio button that says only in this document or new documents based on this template. So what that means is as soon as you have it the way you want it to be, choose new documents based on this template, and then it will remember. And on your computer, whenever you start a new document, it will preset your defaults the way you like it to be. So this is really one of those things that it can be one and done. You do it once, you're good. You don't have to keep doing it. Okay, so now we're going to go through and we're going to put the heading styles on this document. So pick whatever way you want to do it. You can use the Styles Gallery, you can use the Styles pane over here on the side, you can use the keyboard shortcuts, but we're going to go through this whole document and we're going to add our heading styles. So right at the top where it says as a test heading 1, that needs to be a heading 1. And then right below our bear, we have then again heading 2. That's a heading 2. So anybody want to guess what the keyboard shortcut is for heading 2?
Control Alt 2.
That's right. Control Alt 2. That's exactly right. Or you can use you can click either way. And then we have a list for heading 3. Control Alt 3. It only works for 3 levels, by the way. There is no Control Alt 4. You can add that to heading 4 if you choose to, but it's not built in. Then we have not to be outdone, heading 2. That's a heading 2. Right below our poppies, we have a bulleted list, heading 3. And then we have our little starburst, and right below that we have a numbered list, heading 3. That's a heading 3 as well. Then we have our little sunbeam. We have an index, heading 3. It's a heading 3. Below our blue graphic there, we have tables, heading 2. So make that a heading 2. A little bit farther on, we have a table, and right above the table it says laws table, heading 3. Make that a heading 3. Right below the table, directly below the table, it says index styles instead of a table, heading 3. That's another heading 3. A little farther down, there's another table, and about 4 lines above that table, we have listings table exercise, heading 3. And then right below the table, decimal tab exercise, heading 3, and that's the end of the document. So now that we have added those headings, I can show you how to use the navigation pane. So this is under View. So we go to the View tab. And under the View tab, there's a checkbox here for Show. Right now I have my rulers on. There's also grid lines, but in this case I want to show the navigation pane. So I'm going to check for navigation pane. And look what happens. There's all those headings that we just put in. So I can literally just click on any of these headings and it will jump me in the document directly to that heading. So this is a pretty cool thing for you. If you're going in and you're making editing, you're making changes, it makes it so much faster. So I tend to be kind of a lazy person, which I probably shouldn't say on something that's being recorded, but it's true. I'm a lazy person in the definition of a lazy person is somebody who likes to get their work done as quickly and efficiently as possible so they can spend the rest of the time doing what they want to do. That's me. I like to be really fast and efficient if I can be. So what that means is I have a syllabus for a course and I kind of use the same one again and again. I just have to change the due dates and things like that. So I have it set up so that I have a heading for due dates. So I can open up my document, I can have my navigation pane, I can click on due dates, I jump down there and make my changes, I save it, I'm done. I'm off to Starbucks and you guys are still trying to figure out where your due dates are. So it will save you a huge amount of time once you learn to use these tools. It really will. Now the other thing that I wanted to show you about the navigation pane is how easy it is to rearrange things. So if I wanted in this navigation pane to move this section on a numbered list above the bulleted list, I can just click here on my numbered list in my navigation pane, and then I click and hold and drag, and I just move it. And boom, it selected the whole thing, including the graphic that was associated with that section, even though it was across the page. Just grabbed it all, just moved it for me. If you want to move a large section, like if I wanted to move this whole tables heading 2 section, if I'm moving a section that's got subheads, I have to collapse it first, and then I can move it. But then, boom,
Okay.
move the whole thing. So, really a time saver. Very, very cool. By the way, your table of contents is under references. You just would insert your table of contents. By the way, be where you want to have your table of contents before you insert it. I have inserted them in the middle of a document before. You do want to be at the top of the document, but then it will literally, it'll insert all of your headings, and it will insert your page numbers and everything for you automatically. It's a beautiful thing. Styles are a beautiful thing. Now, what's going to happen now that you've started to learn to use styles is you'll probably start to use them sometimes, and then sometimes you don't, and sometimes you forget, and wow, how can I tell really quickly whether I've used styles or not? Do I have to like click on every single one and figure out, did I use styles, did I not use styles? There's actually some tools to help you to see if you've used styles or not. Now, in order to use this tool, we have to have a preliminary setup. And that preliminary setup is where we have to turn on the ability to see styles in our draft view. Most people always work, we've got a bunch of views under view. Most people work in print layout view. This is in draft view that I'm going to show you this. So to turn this feature on, we're going to go under the File menu. So we're going to go under File, and then we're going to go down to Options. In our options, Word options, we have Advanced. Also, I want to point out while we're here in the general options, if you don't like those mini toolbars and that sort of thing, you can get rid of them. You can just uncheck them here, and that will make them go away. But we're going to go to the Advanced choice here, and then we're going to scroll down until we see the word Display. So we want to look for the word Display, not to be confused with the word Display that is at the first level under the options. This is under Advanced first and then Display. And what we're looking for, the 5th box down, Style Area Pane Width in Draft and Outline Views, the default is 0. We want to set it at 1. Style Area Pane Width in Draft and Outline Views. We'll just set it at 1, and that will turn it on. And once you've done that, you can say OK. Now, in order to use this tool, I have to go to my draft view. So under my View tab, I go to my View tab in my ribbon, and then I click on Draft View. And boom. What I have now on the left-hand side is an area where it shows me all of my styles. Now, if you turn this on and all you see over here is normal or body text, that means that you've just applied formatting in the middle. I'm sorry, you've applied formatting to your document, but you haven't actually used styles. And it's the actual styles that are important. The other programs don't care what it looks like. They care what it's called. They care that it's a heading 1 style, that it's a list style, that it's normal or body text style, because they know how to interact with those. People who do HTML will talk about things like style sheets. Style sheets say, oh, well, we have one style sheet that has settings that tell all the headings to do this, and we have another style sheet that tells headings to do that. The reason those work is because you have, under the hood, these tags that say what the text is meant to be. In this case, headings. Okay, so I also want to show you how you apply your list styles. So in my styles pane here, I'm going to go down to my lists so that they're all under L. So I have list bullet, I have list continue, I have list number. I have all of these different list styles. And remember, the reason list styles are important is because the screen reader will announce to the user, oh, I see there's a list coming, and this list has 5 items, so the person understands, oh, okay, these are meant to be grouped together. So I want to show you how to apply these while we're in draft view, because I want to show you the difference between choosing your style from your styles pane over here, that's your freestanding window, versus using your formatting tools that are on your home tab. So let me show you the difference. So I have a list for heading 3. If I choose those, this is list 1, this is list 2, this is list 3, and I'm going to make those a list number. Now the difference between list number 2, list number 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are indents. So if you want it indented, I can choose list 2 or list 3. It doesn't matter for accessibility. As long as it's called list, that's what's important. I don't care about the rest of it. So notice as soon as I choose list number 2, it says now over here in our styles area in our draft mode, list number 2. Now I'm going to undo that and show you what happens when I use that same feature, the numbered list, from my home tab in my paragraph group. So in your paragraph group on your home tab, if you have these formatting tools up here, if I click on that one where it says numbering, notice it's still body text. That's the problem. That's why you do not want to use those tools up there. Just pull your styles from this list. Oops.
Okay.
Go back up to the top. Okay. Now the one thing that you can do up there in your format area of your paragraph group, if I want to change from numbers to letters, there's a little down arrow here next to my formatting icon for numbering. If I click on that little down arrow, I can change to Roman numerals, I can change to uppercase letters, lowercase, whatever you want them to look like. So you have a choice there. You can also define your format, like if you want parentheses, number, parentheses, whatever, you can set that yourself under define format, but that's very easy to get to there. And that's fine because you're just adjusting how it looks. It will not change the style name, and the style name is what is important for accessibility.
Is there a need to number or alphabetize a list? Could you just use plain bullets? Is that an option?
You can use bullets, and I'll show you that next. So if I just want a bulleted list, down a little farther, we have a heading 2, then a bulleted list heading 3. Again, I'm going to select those, and I'm just going to say list bullet. That's fine. But again, you want to choose it as the style, not just put a bullet in front of it, because we want that the individual to be able to know these go together, and they'll know that if it's a list. I'm going to go down a little farther. We have another numbered list. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, so I'm going to select that one. Go to my list number, and this is what happens sometimes. So instead of 1, 2, 3, it says 4, 5, 6. Yeah, what do we do about that? It's actually very easy to fix. So I just come over to the number 4, which is the one I want to change, and I right click on it, and I say restart at 1.
Do that one more time.
So all I did first what I did was I chose my paragraphs that I want to have as my numbered list. I chose list number. In this case, I did list number 2, all the same. And when it made it 4, 5, 6, I just mouse over the 4 and right click, restart at 1.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Notice you also have continue numbering here. It does this less commonly, but sometimes you want it to be a continuation of the numbering. It did not do that. Then you can say continue numbering. So here, if it were, I didn't want it to be a 1, I actually wanted it to be 4, I would just right click and say continue numbering. Either way, you have control over that. Okay. Let's change our view back to print layout just because it's what people are more comfortable with. So I'm going to go again under view and choose print layout. Notice my graphics didn't go anywhere. They're still there. So what I want to show you next is how to make the styles look the way you want them to look. because this is the complaint that I get. I don't want to use styles because I don't like the way they look. Okay, I get that. I'm not really terribly fond of the way that they look in Microsoft Word either. So how do you fix that? So I'm actually going to go back to my home button, or my home tab rather. So if I want to fix heading 1, my best suggestion here is to actually be clicked, have your focus clicked in the style you're working on. The reason is because it's really easy to accidentally apply the style, and I have looked at documents where I went, oh, great, on page 10 I have a 11-line paragraph that's now a heading 1. How did that happen? Well, it's because that happened to be where my focus was with my mouse when I started working on my heading 1. So it's best to be clicked in the heading 1, and then come over to your styles pane, mouse over where it says heading 1. You're going to get a little blue box with a black down arrow on the right hand side. Click on that box and then go to modify. This is the keys to the kingdom. This gives you complete control over this font and everything about this font. So if I don't want it to be blue, I want it to be black, I can just change my color here. Maybe I don't like Cambria, maybe I want it to be Verdana. By the way, your font window is always keyboard sensitive. What that means is if I want Verdana, I can click on the V and it will jump me right down in the list to where that Verdana is. You can literally start typing in there, so you don't have to scroll as much. And let's see, and I want it to be bold, and maybe I want it to be 18-point font instead of 16-point font. So I can do all these things. Maybe I want it centered. Here's your centering tool right here next to your left aligned, center aligned, right under where the font is. You've got, kind of looks like 4 lines that are lined up in the center, so you can center it. All of these things, it's your choice. Accessibility doesn't care. All accessibility cares about is it's called a heading 1. That's all we care about. Everything else is totally up to you. So if I want to have even more control over how this is going to appear, how this heading is going to appear, there's a button down in the bottom left corner of the Modify Style window. It says Format. If I choose that Format button, it gives me control over the font, paragraph tabs, borders, all kinds of different things. If I go under Paragraph, I have control over my before and after spacing. I can say, okay, I want 3 points after. I don't want it right on top of the text. I want a little bit of space there. So you can adjust all of that there in your paragraph group, your spacing, your indents, all of those sorts of things. Your alignment is in that paragraph window. And then once you've got it the way that you want it, notice it gives you a little preview here in the middle. Once you have it exactly how you want it, remember that radio button, only in this document, new documents based on this template. So if you choose new documents based on this template, what it means is the next time you start a brand new document, it will automatically look the way you want it to look. And you don't have to keep doing this. So this is what is so powerful about styles. They really are amazing. And boom, it made the changes I told it to make. So let's look at heading 3, because that one is particularly annoying to me at least. So on my heading 3, I'm going to...
Now will it change all of these in the whole document?
That's what I was going to show you next. Yes, it will. So I'm going to modify my heading 3, and I'm again going to change that to black, and maybe this time I want it to be Arial and bold, and 12 points okay, or maybe I want it to be 13. By the way, you can type into these boxes as well as just choosing what's on the list. And then I'm going to say OK, and now when I go through, every one of my heading 3s has been changed. This is the power of styles. This is why it's so great to use styles. Again, it takes a little while in the beginning to learn how to do it, to get them set up the way that you want, but once you do, it will save you so much time. No more highlighting it, formatting it, all that kind of stuff. It's one and done. And yes, you can do this in Canvas as well. Canvas, I don't know how much control they give you, but they do give you the ability to apply your heading styles, your heading 2. It reserves heading 1 for itself. In Canvas, when you start a new page and you have to put in the title, that is a heading 1. It pre-assigns that as a heading 1, but you have control over your other headings, heading 2, etc. Okay, let me quickly show you if you have the situation where you need to change attributes, where in addition to doing bold, maybe you do bold and a color or maybe a special font. So if I'm going to start with bold, that is my strong attribute. So I'm going to go down in my styles menu here until I see the word strong. Notice next to the word strong is just a letter A. There's not a paragraph mark, there's just an A. What that tells you is this is an attribute style. The A is for attribute. It is an attribute style. So maybe I want to make my, I'm going to make it strong, and then I'm going to select my modify. Maybe I want to make it, so it's bold already. Maybe I want to make it a, I don't know, like a dark green. And maybe I'm going to, I don't know, what else do we do? Maybe I'll make it a particular font. So I want it to be something different. Maybe I want it to be, well, not that one. Maybe I'll do Gothic. Oops, I don't have Gothic on here. Huh. Or else it's not called Gothic. Oh, Gill Sans, that's another sans serif. So maybe I want it to be this specific font. So I make all of these changes to this font, and then next time I want to apply it, instead of going in and having to do all that by hand, I just click on strong. And boom, it's done. And again, remember that little radio button. If this is something you do all the time, say new documents based on this template, and then it will build that in, and you won't have to keep doing it. Save you a huge amount of time if you do this kind of thing. And if you want just individual letters, it's not going to be the whole word, you can also do that. Individual letters. Okay, let me quickly see what else I might have forgotten. In the handout, there's other keyboard shortcuts. One I'll show you because this is so handy. I use this often with PowerPoint. There's a keyboard shortcut for, it's called change case. And I'm clicked here where in my heading, where it says as a test heading 1, I'm just clicked in there. Hold down your shift key and use your F3 on your function keys. So it toggles you through your cases, all uppercase, all lowercase, title case, which is the first letter capitalized. And here's what's really cool. And I use this all the time in PowerPoint because I like my titles to be capitalized, but as I'm going along, sometimes I'll forget that I want it to be capitalized. I'm having a mouse impairment today. So if I select multiple words, it will work on multiple words.
Nice.
Now, by the way, this will not work if you have punctuation included in your highlighting, because it's smart enough to know that you're not supposed to, you know, capitalize everything when there's punctuation. But I use this all the time in PowerPoint when I mistype, and that way I don't have to go back and capitalize every word. It's not smart about understanding the rules about capitalization in a title. It doesn't know that. It's just going to do all of them. But at least it's a faster starting point for your titles. So anyway, there's more in your handout that you can play with and take a look at if you want to. And let's see if I kept everything. Yes, I got everything I wanted to. Okay, so S is for structure and S is for styles. Use your styles, especially the heading styles and the list styles. Those are the really important ones to use. Pay attention to your font size and type. Think about how your document's going to be viewed. Is it a PowerPoint that's going to be viewed from a distance? Is it a Word document the person's going to be holding in their hands? Think about that when you're figuring out your font size.
Now, I was thinking this could be useful for creating exams.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because sometimes the formatting does get a little jumbled when I just try and format.
Definitely. Exams, handouts, all that kind of thing. Avoid using the Enter key for extra spacing, and avoid using that space bar for those multiple spaces. So that is S for structure. Any questions on S for structure?
That was cool.
Good. Yes, that is the one section that actually varies the most from program to program. And that's because that's kind of the difference in a lot of programs. That's the difference between PowerPoint and Word and Excel is their structure. Because their structure is different, the accessibility about structure is a little bit different, but it's always going to be S for structure, that you have to think about the structure of your document. And finally, we have T is for tables. So the really important issue with tables is marking the header rows. Now, in Word, it makes it super easy to mark the header row in table, which is the first row that has the little headers that go for each of your columns. What is not easy to do in older versions of Word. It's easy to do in the brand new version, Word 2017. But if you have the older version, that first column, you cannot mark in Word, in the older versions of Word. You can in the newer one, but not in the older ones. So if the way your table is meant to be read is that you're pretty much always going to explore the table by reading it row by row, you don't really need to worry so much about marking that first column because you're always meant to be reading across the rows. That's tables that are really done for visual layout purposes rather than necessarily having to be a table. Now, there's another kind of table, and that is a true data table, where to really fully explore the table, you would not just read across the row, you would also need to read down a column. In those kinds of tables, that first column is going to be important to mark as header cells. You cannot do that in Word in the older versions. You can in the newest, but not in the older ones. Your easy button for that, you either learn how to do it in Adobe Acrobat Pro, it will let you do it, or do your tables in Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
Because Canvas is very easy. All you have to do in Canvas when you have a header cell, you just right click on it, you go to your cell properties, and you say, this is a header cell. It's very easy. And then you set the scope, and scope is just, is it for a column or is it for a row? And you get to tell it which one it is. So it's actually, I like the table tools in Canvas very much. And I have had good luck personally with starting something in Word and then copying it, pasting it into Canvas, and then just using the Canvas tools for the table. But I have had other people say they've not had good luck with that. So, you know, your mileage may vary. You may have to start it completely from scratch in Canvas. But like I said, I have had actually pretty good work myself, just with bringing it in and then fixing it. But you may or may not. It probably depends on versions a lot. So another thing with tables, it's best not to merge cells. And that's when you take multiple cells and put them together to make one big cell. The reason that's problematic for accessibility is that it's hard for the program to know what the header cells are. So it gets a little confused. It's like, well, what cells go with this cell? And is this thing, you know, with all of these cells or whatnot? And I've seen actually tables that were, it was almost, in fact, it was hard for the human being to figure out what went with what, and screen readers would just have no shot at it at all. So if the reason you're merging cells is you have a lot of titles that you're putting in the middle of your table, it's like, okay, this part is for this kind of exam and this part is for this kind of exam, it's actually better to make a number of smaller tables and then just put your title outside the table. So you put your title first and then start the table. And here's another tip. If you want to make sure your title doesn't get separated from the table, make your title some level of heading. And the reason is that the heading styles in Word automatically have built into them a feature that's called Keep With Next, where it literally tries to keep that heading with whatever comes after it. So a lot of times the reason that people put the title inside the table is they don't want it to end up on the bottom of a page and then the table on the next page. They want them to go together. So using the headings is a way of not having to worry about that. It's also best not to break the row across the page. Now this is actually not accessibility for people who are blind because they don't care. They're not reading the print layout view anyway. What they're reading is literally something that's more like the draft view that we looked at. But for people who have vision, it can be really awkward when you've got most of the cell on one page and you've got like one word on the next page. Or I've even seen it sometimes where the header cell itself is split between two pages. So it makes zero sense at all. So I'm going to show you how to turn that off. And then if you just want things side by side, rather than using a table for that or rather than using tabs for that, I'm going to show you how to use columns. Columns is a better choice for that if you just want that side-by-side look. The only time that I would recommend using tabs is if you have to align decimals. If you have to align decimals, the only way to do it is with a decimal tab. There is no other way to get decimals to align properly. That's the only time I would use a tab. And the reason is, again, other programs are not sure what to do with tabs. Sometimes screen readers won't even read tabs. They'll treat them as if there's nothing there. So in other words, they'll just run the text together. They'll see it as one huge word. They won't even see it as spaces necessarily. So that can be kind of problematic. So tabs are not the best thing to use. Having the header row that you can see across multiple pages is really useful. This is one of those things where I've had faculty members say to me sometimes, oh my gosh, I spent hours getting my tables on one page. Yeah, you don't have to do that if you repeat the header row. So it's really, really useful thing. And for all of us, if we go in to make the text bigger, well, now we've just messed all of your work up, and it will be across multiple pages. So very handy being able to see that header row. So let's see how to do this. So in our Word document, we've got a table down here. And I'm actually going to get rid of some text up here so I can force this table to break across multiple pages. So here's the issue. If we have not marked the header row, we've got part of the table on one page, part of the table on the next page, no header row. We've got some of the text on one page, some of the text on the next page. This is just a mess. So how do we fix this? So first, to mark the header row, I need to click in my table in that top row. Now as soon as you click in your table, you will get a tab up here on your ribbon for Table Tools. It has two areas. It has Design and Layout. We don't see that until we click in the table. It's a little bit confusing. You still have Design and Layout over on the left for the entire document. This is a new Design and Layout that is just for the table. So I'm going to go to my Layout tab of my Table Tools, and I'm going to choose, it's there on the right-hand side, Repeat Header Row. And watch what happens as soon as I click Repeat Header Row. Boom. Now my second page has my header row on it, and I can see it. Now this is important for accessibility even if the table's on one page. You still need it for accessibility because the screen reader literally looks to see, is there a header row on this table, so that it can repeat it for the person as they're reading across. It will announce the header row to the person as they're reading across the table. So it's important even if it's on one page. So let's also look at how we can keep that row from breaking across the page like that so inconveniently. So in order to do this, I need to do this for the whole table, so I want to select the whole table. The easy way to select the whole table is in our table, right at the top left corner, there's going to be a little box with a four-headed arrow. By the way, you have to be in your print layout view in order to see the table like this. It will not work in draft view. So if you were in draft view, you have to change into print layout view. But in print layout view, I see that little box. I click on that little box. It will select the whole table. And it will select the whole table even if it goes across multiple pages. So that's the nice thing here, rather than trying to hand select it. It really makes it an easy shortcut. So now I need to go to Table Properties, and there are two ways to get there. In my Table Tools Layout tab, I can either choose Properties on the far left, or I can right-click and choose Properties. That works as well, either way. So once I have my table properties open, I'm going to choose Row. And there's a little checkbox here, Allow Row to Break Across Page. I just want to uncheck that box. Now notice while I'm here in Table Properties, look, we have alt text over here as well. So if I click on that, again, ignore title, in my description, I can just put a very brief description on my table. In this case, this is laws related to disability. Oops, and I had the caps lock on. That is enough of a description, but if you've done something unusual in the table, like I had one individual who teaches in health classes, and she said sometimes she has really complex tables that she uses, and she'll kind of make up her own abbreviations. So if you have a situation like that where you're doing something that's kind of unusual in your table and you want to communicate that because you're concerned about the screen reader understanding it, you can literally do that there. You can provide that information there in your table alt text. Okay, so now when I say OK, it's not going to let that row break across the page anymore. Boom. Moves it down all onto one page. And then I've got an awkward page break here, but we know how to fix that now. Remember, Control Enter, insert a page break, and it moves it down to the next page. One other cool thing that I'm going to show you about tables, not because it has anything to do with accessibility, but just because it's so cool.
Mhm.
If you ever want to rearrange your tables, I actually am a big fan of tables. I love tables. If you want to rearrange your columns, I'm going to come above my last column here, my third column. Get your mouse so it's right above the top of the column and kind of slowly bring it down. It takes a little while to get the coordination for it. You'll get a black down arrow. When you get that black down arrow, if you click on it, it selects the entire column. And if I want to rearrange these columns, I come up to the top left corner of the column here, and I can just click and hold and drag, and I can rearrange my columns.
Mm.
Which is really handy sometimes. You get something set up and then go, oh, I don't like that order, I want to, so you can just click and hold and drag.
Okay, so I have a question
Yeah.
about text boxes. So
Uh-huh.
you're saying to avoid them.
Uh-huh.
What if you create a table instead of a text box? Would that bypass?
Well, it depends. If you're talking about creating a table just for a layout and it's not a true table with headers on it,
Yeah, it would just be a single cell table.
yeah, no. I will show you how to put a box around something.
Oh, okay.
If what you really want is the box,
Yeah,
I'll show you
because
how to do that in like
oftentimes,
10
I mean,
seconds.
particularly in PowerPoint, I want to highlight something, but it doesn't need a whole slide.
Yeah, and I think
And
you
I
can do
can't
this
hold
in...
it within the text. I want it to stand out.
Yeah, no, I will show you how to do that. It's actually super easy. Okay, so that's tables. So what you were just talking about is essentially getting something to format the way that you want it to look without breaking accessibility. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit under an index heading 3 where we've got this pretty blue graphic here. So I'm going to select the text from where it says this is index 1 all the way through my graphic. And what I'm going to do is I want this text next to the graphic, so I'm going to make this into columns. And the way that I do that, it's under Layout, Columns. And you have preset for 2 columns, 3 columns, and then you have preset for what it calls left column and right column. Left column is where it's a very narrow column on the left and a wider column on the right, and right is vice versa. But if you go down to more columns, you can do whatever you want. You can have 4 columns, or you can have a really wide column and a really skinny column. You can set all of that here in your column choices. But in this case, I'm pretty good with just having the column, the left one, has the narrow left and the wider right. Now, because I had my graphic centered, it's kind of way far away from my text. But because we kept our graphic in line, we can treat it just like we would treat text, which means that I can change my alignment here from center aligned. Under my home tab in my paragraph group, I can left align it. And now it's closer to the text. If I want this text even closer to the graphic, and this, you need to have your ruler turned on to do this. And again, your ruler is turned on under your View tab. And then in your Show group, you have Ruler right at the top. You have a checkbox for Ruler. So with my ruler turned on, I can select this text. And on your ruler, it looks like kind of an hourglass sitting on a box. That's your indent. And on that little box area, I can click and hold and drag, and I can just scooch it over a little bit if I want it to be a little bit closer. So you have complete control over all that. And this is all fine for accessibility. So now let me show you how to put a box around where it says decorative graphics or sometimes just pretty. So if I want to box that text, I just have to be clicked in the text. And this is really important. You want to just click in the text. You do not want to select the text. If I select the text, it will work differently. It will underline it. And I don't want to underline it. I just want to put a box around it. So the way that I do that is I go to my Home tab, and in my paragraph group, right at the bottom right corner of my paragraph group, there's this little, it looks like a window shade kind of. Looks like a, a window with 4 panes in it. That's your borders box. So I'm going to click on the arrow next to my borders, and I'm going to just say I want an outside border, and I just put a box around it. This is boxed text, not a text box. So I just put a decorative box around it, and that's fine. The screen reader doesn't care about if it's a decorative box. It could care less. Now maybe I want to adjust that. Maybe I want a heavier box. How do I do that? So if I come back here to my borders icon on my paragraph group, and I'm going to click on the down arrow next to the borders icon, down at the bottom I have a borders and shading choice. That opens up all the different things that I can do to my border here. So maybe I want to make it a little heavier box. So maybe I want to make it a 1-point box. And maybe I want to shade this box. So I can go to my shading tab and I can say I want to fill it with, maybe I like that light orange color there. So maybe I like that. Always watch your color contrast if you're going to use color.
For accommodation purposes, the color and the box are not going to be identified, or
No, it won't
So
be
it-
verbalized.
so it just reads down without that. Okay.
Yeah, but you do have to remember, be careful about the color contrast for everybody who can see.
Right.
And this is actually kind of a trick that I will sometimes use. For someone who's blind, color contrast doesn't matter for the screen reader. The screen reader will literally read white text on a white background. Because remember, it's not reading what you see, it's reading what's under the hood. And under the hood, it sees text there, so it's saying, oh, this is the text I see. I have used that as a trick sometimes. We generally discourage you from using layout, or rather a table just for layout purposes, but I have seen a couple of times where there was no way around it. The only way to get things exactly where you wanted to be was to use a table. But for accessibility, it's expecting a header row on the table. So what we did was we put white text in the header row,
Oh.
so it essentially was invisible. And then in this case, it was the library. They had a book and then a description of the book. And this was a flyer that or a thing they were putting on their website. And they just couldn't get it to line up at all because it was different sizes and it was sort of all over the place. So this was the trick that we used. And then we put white on white. We put book. I think we just said book and then description or something like that. Because we didn't really want other people to see it.
Yeah.
So white on white worked perfectly fine because the screen reader saw it and that's all we cared about. So the other thing here with your box, maybe the text is kind of close there because there's not a whole lot of room between that box and that text. So how do we fix that? Again, under borders and shading, if we go back to our borders icon in our paragraph group, down at the bottom, borders and shading, there's a, a button here at the bottom right side of this window that says options. This is where you control, it's called offset. It's the space between the line and the text. And it's set pretty small, so I can just make it bigger. Gives you a little preview there. Sometimes you don't want it identical all the way around. That's your choice. And there you go. Now you've got a little space.
How would you move that box to the second column without using the enter key?
You could add spacing. And I would have to play with it myself to see which one worked better, whether I wanted to add the spacing after the paragraph or ahead of where it says decorative graphic. Probably it's going to want to be ahead of it. But it's going to have to be a pretty big amount of spacing. And then it would take some playing with it because it's going to have to make them even. And so it might take a huge amount of spacing actually
I end
here.
up fiddling around with columns.
Yeah, you have to until you get them the way you want them to
Yeah,
be.
But to
It may-
avoid the spacing, I haven't thought about.
Yeah, let's see. I wonder if I can also do my, oopsie, that's not where I wanted it to be. Oops. You might be able to do the, nope, that didn't work. You might, there's a, you can insert a column break, your breaks up here. Where's my other breaks? Not page breaks. There is a way to insert a column break, and it's not obviously giving it to me right there, but there is a way to do that as well. I would have to look and see where you do that. Oh, it might be under, is it under columns? Yeah, okay, it's actually with columns. You can insert a column break there, it looks like. Yeah, there's your column break. But then I lost my box. So this is one of those things that, also it's going to depend on exactly where you are when you do it. I might have to add another space there just to insert my break. But this is the kind of thing that, I would have to mess with. So now my spacing's all messed up. I want to take that back down to 6 or something. So it would take a little bit of playing with it,
Yeah, okay, but that makes.
but that would be how you would do it.
Yeah, nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me make sure I've covered everything I want to talk to you about tables here. Oh yeah. So occasionally, I mentioned this before, occasionally you'll have, like your statisticians and people like that will have a super complex sort of a table and they just can't make it simple. So what you can do in that case is put a hyperlink out to your original Excel document and just say whatever the name of the table is, accessible version. I would put that before the table so the person knows, oh, okay, here's the accessible version and I don't have to mess with, you know, this whole table. Just make sure that they know it's the same name as the table. And let's see. Do either of you use decimal tabs at all? No, I'm going to just skip that then. Okay, so here's our summary for tables. Make sure you mark that header row. If you have a header column, when you're in your Canvas course, mark it there. Do your table headers on there. Watch out about those rows breaking across the page. That can just be kind of a pain. Every once in a while, if you have a super huge table, you'll have to allow one to break across the page. Usually what I'll do is I'll preset my tables not to break. That'll be my default. And then if I have to go in and break an individual row, I'll just select that row and go to the properties and break just that row. Best not to merge cells just because it gets confusing about the header cells. So put your title before the table so that you don't have to put it inside the table. Use columns rather than tables if you're just doing layout in most cases. For box text, remember we saw how you could use your columns, add that decorative border, and then put your little table summary, your alt text on your table. So, any questions about T for tables? So we did L for links, I for images, S for structure, T for tables. We're almost done. We have one more thing we have to do for accessibility, and that is to add a title to our document. And this is the same place in Word and PowerPoint. It is under File, Title.
Oh.
So the reason we add a title, I'm just going to call this formatting. The reason that we add a title is because you can put a shorter title there than is in the official title bar that's at the top of the document. Because like on this document, it has 01 formatting activity, compatibility mode Word. It has all of this verbiage up there. And that's often true. Sometimes with agencies, they have to put the pathway where they're finding it, so they're going to have C:, blah, 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 all of this stuff up there. So what it will do with the title is if you have multiple documents open, multiple Word documents in this case, the screen reader can go to the title. It'll go there to that title to tell the person this is what this document is. Okay, so now, a couple other things I want to show you here in your file info area. Here's your button for Protect Document. So sometimes if you want to post that Word document but you're concerned about security, this is where you would say mark it as final, make it so you can't edit. But right under that, this is where we're going next, check for issues. Check for issues. And this will run our Word accessibility checker. Check accessibility. Now, I love this accessibility checker. Love, love, love this accessibility checker. It shows us here on the side what's wrong. If I click where it says picture 3, it takes me right to picture 3. And remember to put the alternate text on, I right click and go to Format Picture. Go to my Layout and Properties. So I'm just going to call this a starburst. And notice as soon as I label it, it takes it off the list. Now, this is a very cool feature. I just have to click where it says picture 4. The format picture stays open. The description is right there. This is my sunbeam. Oops, not a dun beam, it's a sunbeam. Picture 5, I'm calling this a moonbeam. And then it tells me, oh, missing alt text on table. Gosh, I thought I did that. Oh gosh, there's another table there. That's how come it's missing. So remember, I can go under my layout to my Table Tools properties, or I can just right click and go to my table properties. This is a real estate listings. And then it says no header row. So again, just click where it says the error is. It automatically selects the header row for me. And I can just choose repeat header row and Boom, I did my accessibility check. Now, it also gives me a tip, check reading order of the table. So this is not an error. What it's telling you is remember that when a screen reader reads a table, it's going to read across each row. And it's saying, is that going to make sense? If it reads across each row, is that going to make sense? So it's just reminding you, pay attention to how you set up your table. So there is a little bit of a funny bug in Word where I need to close down my accessibility checker and all of my sidebars before I save this out to a PDF. Otherwise, for some reason, it does not bring all of the accessibility information with it. And sometimes, if you're losing any of your accessibility, it should keep everything. If you're losing everything, you might literally just close it and then go back in and open the document again. Let's see, there it is. And then save it to PDF. It's just a bug. I don't know why it does that. And it doesn't do it on every version of Word. It's just kind of weird. Sometimes it does it. But just know that that's the solution. Just close it, open it again, and then save it. Now, when you're saving out to PDF, you have a number of different ways that you can do this. If you have Adobe Acrobat Pro installed on your computer, you'll have a little Acrobat tab that will come up just to the right of the View tab. You can use that and say Create PDF. This particular computer does not have that, so I can go under File, I can go to Save As and Save As PDF. I can go to Export and I can export it to PDF. The one thing I do not want to do is print it to PDF. When you print it, you flatten it and it will take out all that accessibility information we just put in. So anything other than printing is fine. So I can do Save As, and then in my file name, I'm just going to change it to, in my file type, I'm just going to save it to PDF. And here we go. I'm going to save it to PDF. Now, you just have Reader on here and not Pro. So I can't show you the accessibility checker that comes with Adobe Acrobat Pro, but if you had Adobe Acrobat Pro on here, you could run your accessibility check again. And it finds, it's going to give you a couple of reminder alerts about paying attention to color contrast, paying attention to reading order. But the one thing it sometimes doesn't do right is the title. And you just have to right click and say Fix. If it does that, it's again a little bit of a bug. It should be holding the title as well. But as soon as you right click it and say Fix, it's fine. But that you cannot do in Reader. You can only do that in Adobe Acrobat Pro. So you do need Adobe Acrobat Pro, and I believe you're going to be getting it here in your Professional Development Center. But you did it. That is an accessible PDF. Now, I want to show you a couple other things very quickly. So this is all great, but what if I didn't do this on my other Word documents? What am I going to do now? I didn't use styles. So I'm going to open the 02 auto format activity, and I'm going to show you how you can quickly and easily add styles to a document. So you may not have used styles, but you probably did some formatting. You probably went in, you selected text, you made it bold, maybe you centered it, made it a particular font, all of those sorts of things. It's just not a style. So if I go under View to my draft, remember View Draft will show me have I used styles. And notice in this document it says nothing but body text. If you see nothing but body text or nothing but normal, styles have not been used because those just automatically appear for you. So I want to be able to use my heading styles. I want it to apply the heading styles for me. So there's a couple preliminary steps that you need to do here. One is that you need to put your auto format tool up here on your quick access toolbar, which is up in the top left corner of Word right above your ribbon. There's a little down arrow there, customize quick access toolbar. We need to go to more commands. And under our more commands, the command that I'm looking for, it's not even a popular command, it's under all commands, and actually let me remove it because it remembered from last time I did this morning. So under all commands, I'm looking for auto format. And this is an alphabetical list. Go away. I'm looking for auto format. Now be careful, you have a bunch of variations of auto format. You have auto correct, you have auto fit, you have auto format as you type, auto format options. I just want plain old auto format. And then I'm going to add that to my quick access toolbar and say OK. So now up here in my quick access toolbar, it looks like a little piece of paper with a lightning bolt. That's my auto format. So to get ready to use my auto format, if I want to have the styles, the heading styles, look the way I hand formatted them, I need to do one additional preliminary step. And that is, if right at the top here, if this is the way I want my heading 1 to look, I need to go into my styles, go to my drop down next to the heading 1, and this time say update heading 1 to match selection. So what I'm doing is I'm saying I want my heading 1 to look like this so it doesn't overwrite the way your style looks. Otherwise it will apply its heading 1 style. And if you like the way yours looks, not the way Words looks, you need to do this preliminary step. It will also automatically make this a heading 1. And then your heading 2, the same thing. Go to the down arrow and say I want to update heading 2 to match this. And my heading 3, and I want to update to match that heading 3. Now, so that I don't have to go in and manually make the rest headings, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my auto format tool. So I'm going to put this where you can see both some headings that are currently body text and also some lists. So I'm going to go to my little icon up there on my toolbar, the auto format icon, and I'm going to click on that icon. This is something you can explore at some point if you want to see all the different things that it does, but I'm just going to run it. I'm going to say auto format now, and look what it did. So my headings are now all headings, my lists are now all lists, and I did not have to go in and manually do any of that. And then at that point you'd be ready to run your accessibility checker, so you could put your tags or your alternate text rather on your graphics, and you would be ready to go. So that's a little tip for helping you with making your formatting go a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. And now, because a couple people were asking about PowerPoint, I'll say just a little bit more about PowerPoint. And you have all kinds of other information here in your little handout. So, the really big thing with PowerPoint, stick with the themes. They're under your Design tab. Use the themes where it says enter text here, enter the text there. So rather than drawing your own text boxes, use their text boxes. That will create an accessible document. If you've drawn in your own text boxes, I'm sorry, there's no easy way to fix that. It's just, I looked and looked and looked because somebody had done that, and yeah, there's no easy way. Watch your color contrast. Use that accessible, or the color contrast analyzer that I talked about to check it, make sure it's good contrast. The styles are going to be applied automatically as long as you've typed in where it says to type. You want the very first slide in your slide deck to use the title slide layout, and that's here under your Home tab, under your Layout, Title Slide. So your very first slide would be the title slide. After that, use whatever you want. By the way, you can resize. If I need to resize any of the areas, that's fine to do. That's not a problem for accessibility, but you need to type where it tells you to type. Each slide needs to have a unique name. If you have continuation slides, you can say accessible PowerPoint 1, accessible PowerPoint 2, but make them slightly different. Now, if you have a situation where you have a slide that's really entirely a graphic, there's nothing else on there besides a graphic, you don't really want the title to be visible, use that trick of making it color on color and just push it into the background. For accessibility, in terms of the screen reader, that won't matter. It'll still find it. That's okay. Just for those of us who are sighted who won't be able to see it. So your logical link names, just like we did in Word, describing your graphics, right click, just exactly like you did in Word. One thing to be careful of in PowerPoint, if you put multiple PowerPoints together, I do this all the time, I pull from one, pull from another. Sometimes you can end up with funny things down here in the footer. So sometimes you may just need to delete boxes, empty boxes down in the footer. And then, just like with Word, you go in that same spot, your file and your big button, check for issues, and run your accessibility checker. So just to summarize in PowerPoint, following your list, you're going to use your logical link names. You're going to put your brief description on your graphics for your images. Structure with PowerPoint, that's going to mean using your built-in themes, using the title slide as your very first slide, giving each slide its own title, watching out for those blank boxes in the footer, and then if you use tables, just like in Word, mark your header row, add your table summary, and it's best not to merge cells. And then last thing, just like in Word, add your title, same place, under File, put in your brief title. In Canvas, you still can follow your list in Canvas. Your links, look for your link tool in your rich content editor. Select the text that you want to make of the link, use your link tool, just like you did in Word. In Canvas, your alt text is going to be in your Insert Images window. Now also brand new in Canvas, look for that ability to mark it as decorative text. If you mark it as decorative text, it will hide it in the background so the screen reader won't see it. If it's hidden in the background, you don't need to put alt text on it because it won't be visible. If you have an older Canvas course where you did not insert the alt text when you inserted the graphic, just click on your graphic, choose Insert Image again. It's kind of non-intuitive because you think, well, I've already inserted it. That just happens to be where the alt text lives. So you just click on Insert Image again, and then you can put in your alt text or mark it as decorative. For the structure, in the Rich Content Editor, you have styles under paragraph. Just select